Hello, and welcome to our third session of the webinar series of 2021 featuring alumni and experts from various fields. My name is Dana Arakat, and I'm the Director of Communications at the MIT Arab Alumni Association, a volunteer-run association that was established to connect MIT and the Arab world and create a space for alumni to collaborate. This conversation will be conducted in English. If you would like simultaneous translation to Arabic, please select the Chinese tab from the interpretation menu. أهلاً وسهلاً بكم في الجلسة الثالثة من سلسلة ندوات عبر الإنترنت لعام 2021 والتي تضم خريجين وخبراء من مختلف المجالات. اسمي دانا عريقات، مسؤولة الاتصالات في جمعية الخريجين العرب في معهد ماساتشوستس للتكنولوجيا MIT، وهي جمعية يديرها متطوعون تم إنشاؤها لربط معهد MIT بالعالم العربي وخلق مساحة للخريجين للتعاون. ستجري هذه المحادثة باللغة الإنجليزية. إذا كنتم ترغبون للاستماع باللغة العربية فيرجى تحديد Chinese أو اللغة الصينية من علامة الترجمة الفورية. Today we are joined by a brilliant and exceptional Palestinian man whose journey from Gaza to Mars has made quite a lot of headlines lately. Lu'ay al-Bassiouni is a source of inspiration and hope for so many of us and for young people around the world. We would like to take a minute to extend our thanks to the sponsor of this session, Luminous Technical College University, for their generosity. And I must mention here that the owner of this college is also a brilliant man from Gaza. Luminous Technical University College is one of the subsidiaries of Luminous Education, a pioneering educational institution located in Jordan, offering high-quality, accessible, technical, and practical education that is focused on employment, powered by technology, and is in alignment with the latest local, regional, and international labor market regulations. This webinar will last for about an hour. I will begin with a short video, followed by introducing our speaker, and with some questions for him to answer. And finally, we will respond to your questions from the queue for the Q&A session. To participate in the Q&A session, please type your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. This will be a no voice participation webinar. So for now, let us watch a short video about the Ingenuity helicopter and Lu'ay al-Bassiouni.
Sometimes you have to do something just to show that you can do it. When the Wright brothers flew for the first time, they flew an experimental aircraft. And in the same way, the Mars helicopter is designed to show that we can fly powered helicopter flight in the Martian atmosphere.
This morning, space geeks the world over, myself included, are savoring these stunning images from NASA's Ingenuity flight on Mars. This video, taken from the nearby rover Perseverance, captured all 30 seconds of it. Ingenuity's liftoff, a very steady climb, then hovering 10 feet above the Martian surface before gently touching down. And this very cool still photo from Ingenuity's own camera captured its shadow on the surface as it hovered above. The chopper or drone is so far from Earth, it must fly itself, making 500 calculations every second.
Confirm that Ingenuity has performed its first flight, the first flight of a powered aircraft
NASA
to another
scientists
planet.
created history yesterday when they flew a small helicopter on Mars, an epic achievement over 170 million miles from Earth. For one of the lead NASA engineers in California, Lu'ay al-Bassiouni, this incredible journey mirrored his own adventure after growing up in Gaza in the Middle East and moving to America as a 20-year-old to study. I was able to speak to him a few days ago as he and the team made their final preparations. Lu'ay al-Bassiouni grew up in Gaza, close to the Israeli border, a place seething with tension, with poverty, and at times with war. But at 20, Lu'ay won a scholarship that would translate him from here via an American university to this.
And liftoff.
His key responsibility was for the helicopter aboard that has made such history on Mars.
To me, as a kid, I was like almost dreaming to become like in aerospace engineering, but I decided that is not a thing for me, because I figured like Palestine does not have a space program. So it wasn't really an easy journey. I mean, to just be able to leave Gaza, then to come to college, and after that to actually be able to like help, be able to maintain paying my tuition and my finances through college. I mean, it was pretty rough times.
But a journey from Gaza to the United States in and of itself is a very difficult thing to achieve. How did you make the transition?
I mean, it's like, I like Mission Impossible, so.
So to learn more about him and what he likes in addition to Mission Impossible and about his work and journey, to introduce Luay El-Bassiouni. Luay is a Palestinian electrical engineer who grew up in Gaza, finished his post-secondary school in Beit Hanine School. His remarkable journey from Gaza to Mars and his achievements have been featured in multiple international media outlets around the world. Luay was part of the NASA team that made history in April of 2021, flying the Ingenuity helicopter from the surface of Mars, where he was an power electronics lead for the NASA JPL. Been awarded a number of achievement awards for his exceptional contribution to the Mars helicopter team in demonstrating feasibility of helicopter flight in extremely thin atmosphere at Mars. Luay's career spans 17 years in several industries, including renewable energy, aerospace, working on Ford's first electric car. His career from working to small startups to large companies. Most recently, Luay worked on advanced power conversion and propulsion technologies used for the development of space applications such as NASA JPL Mars helicopter. He is an active member of the Institute of Engineers, Power Society. Luay is currently the Senior Director of Engineering at Astrodyne TDI. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, a Master of Engineering in Computer Engineering, and a Master of Science in Engineering from the University of Louisville. So without further ado, Luay, welcome very much to this webinar, and it is today. And first of all, really congratulations on all of your remarkable achievements. I would like to start by asking you a question. Did Luay, 12-year-old Luay, growing up in this moment, ever dream on such a grand and a historical moment? And I would like you to also tell us about your journey of how did you leave Gaza? How did you come to the United States? And what was your journey through your education to where you're at today?
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be part of such an inspirational university, alumni. And I start with your first question, which is, since I was really young, I don't really remember the age, was it 10, was it before? I always was like just this really curious kid. I always fixed stuff. I always try to tear down things, figure out how they work. I always innovated without even understanding what I was doing. A lot of times I was like creating things that didn't really make any sense, but to me at the time. So I always developed the passion, I guess, for electronics. At one point I thought I wanted to be like a pilot, or like, actually develop aircrafts. But after that, I kind of really determined that electronics, that's one of the most challenging things out there. And, I kind of continue working on that path. When I got to college, I started English in Gaza, and I started applying for a lot of the universities. And, I took a lot, I studied English almost approximately for like 8 months. While I'm waiting for the visa, I figured, I'd take as many classes as I could just to save myself time, since, the visa process takes forever. And so, by the time I got my visa, I was already like 2.5 months already, after the school started. So, I could not actually attend my first semester, because I got United States in March. So, when I first got to the US, I worked a lot. So I used to work you know, a lot of different jobs. Like I worked in restaurants, you know, making Subway sandwiches for people who know Subway, you know, and after that, I got accepted in a couple different universities. Originally, I was supposed to go to a Bellevue University in Nebraska. I never been there. I never been to Nebraska. I think I had 9 feet of snow the day I arrived to the US, and I figured, you know, it's not the place where I wanted to be. But, you know, then while I was waiting for school to start, I ended up going to Kentucky. And from there, you know, I was just going there to work, for working, you know, and then a few months later, I got accepted into Edinboro University of Pennsylvania. They had this reduced tuition for international student. But I went there, it was a small town in middle Pennsylvania that I couldn't really figure a way to find a job or do anything. So I had to really go back to Kentucky where, you know, I knew people and I had worked before. So I used to work and go to college. You know, in 2000, things got a little bit difficult. So I had to kind of drop out, you know, 2001. So I was out of college between 2001 and 2002. And then I transferred to University of Louisville and I studied, electrical engineering. I finished 2002 to 2004. And then 2004 to 2005, I got my master. And after that, I kind of like, you know, you mentioned, I worked on a lot of different electric vehicle startups. I worked with, you know, actually worked with General Electric. That's where I gained a lot of my experience in their industrial electric vehicle division. You know, where you actually develop things like forklifts, golf cars, neighborhood electric vehicles. We worked on things like, you know, even like early concept for electric vehicles that, you know, was, you know, like Ford F-150, things like that. But after that, with the economy crashing in 2008, 2009, GE ended up shutting down that division. Then I went to start working with a lot of different startup companies, and some of them actually we worked on the first electric vehicle that actually was on the road, which was the Ford Transit Connect. So actually I was part of developing the propulsion system for that. And then I continued my passion. I love working in EV markets. You know, I love working on alternative energy. I took it personal on, you know, like finding an alternative to oil. You know, oil causes a lot of pain in the Middle East. You know, it doesn't matter where you're from. You know, I think we all, in one way or another, you know, with the exception with a few countries, you know, we are victims of oil more than we are, you know. That kind of gave me my passion to work on this alternative route, you know, alternative mode of like propulsions, and, you know, working on like from electric vehicle, I got into electric airplanes, but the company actually had electric vehicle charging that we ended up getting the NASA project to work on design the helicopter.
So were you recruited for the work on NASA, or is it a position you applied to?
No. So I worked with the company. So I was mainly I was senior staff power electronic engineer, working in the company that, you know, like NASA, we worked very closely with NASA on the concept from early on. So it was a co-development between JPL and the company. It's, a lot of people don't understand how NASA really works. So NASA is basically, you know, it's like almost like Minister of Space, you know, like in a different country, you know, and so like they work with a lot of different, including JPL. JPL is basically a contractor of NASA, but they're kind of funded by NASA and Caltech. So a lot of stuff actually get worked on by JPL. So JPL sometimes they actually subcontract the projects to other companies, because a lot of time, you know, NASA basically to summarize it, they are the system guys more than they are like the design guys. So we are the expert on like designing like small aircraft with very light weight. And previously we worked in another project called Helios, which was actually for NASA. We designed a solar plane that went up 100,000 feet. And we actually also worked on something like a flying hummingbird, which is basically just mimic actually a hummingbird. You know, you probably can see it, you know, it's the only flying hummingbird out there, and, you know, was Time magazine cover. We are specialized in these very small electronics. So, I was the main power electronic guy that worked at this company. I did all the power electronics. Basically every single motor controller they had, to the point until I, you know, left the company. So, when we got the Mars helicopter, I got the choice, you know, you know, do you want to be part of this? Because I'm practically the most experienced guy to develop like motor controller and like work on propulsion system at the company. since I'd done it with a lot of other ones that actually that's super lightweight. And that's basically was one of the main goals. I mean, the first, day we were talking about it was like, hey, we need it to be X amount of grams, which is like, they always like, I always had these challenges. How can you design something so light, because even flying, flying anything that electrical on Earth is like, it's very challenging because of the weight of the battery. So, I mean, flying any electric airplane on Earth is like, the energy density of a battery is a lot less than, like you take as basically like not even 1 to 1,000 of jet fuel or diesel. So like to travel X amount of miles, you need X amount of energy. So that make the entire aircraft have to be super difficult. Everything had to be lightweight. So we had to find a lot of different ways to do that.
How long did the process, how long has this process taken? When did you start working on this?
So probably when we early start in 2013, 2014, beginning in 2014, that's when we start like working on it. So, I mean, back then it was like, basically it was almost like, hey, can we build a toy? Basically like a toy out of like basically hobby stuff to just like spin a prop and actually fly into the Mars atmosphere chamber. And, there was some videos actually released of that. You could probably see that, tiny helicopter, even smaller than the helicopter. And it was like lifting off the ground inside of like the Mars atmosphere and like falling left and right. So, I mean, that was like the first thing, back then we had to connect the tether system because it was not powered by battery. So there's a wire connected to it. So I had to work part of that. So, I mean, that's like the early stages when we basically studied the theory of like, what is, and back then it's like, we're still even like thinking is like, even is helicopter even an available solution? So it wasn't even like,
so it wasn't a goal set by a certain year that by the year 2021.
Oh, no.
Was there a goal set? Was there like a certain goal set or?
I don't know how much I can disclose, but it's like, basically, so the Mars 2020 mission, that's the mission was set. So that's the Perseverance mission. So, you had to succeed to be part of it. It's basically we are a passenger, so the plane schedule is already set. And the Perseverance was already started. We didn't have the same timeline. We had to prove a theory to become like a passenger. It's like, hey, to be able to get onto this aircraft, to be able to go to Mars, you need to meet all these requirements. It's like, so we had to really like, it was really challenging because like a lot of time we had to like, early on, we're just like, oh, this like, just imagination that maybe it would, nobody even thought it might even go in 2020. But the Mars mission, the 2020 was already scheduled. You can look at the public data. It was called the Mars 2020 mission. So we always knew like, I don't even know the exact date when the Mars 2020 mission started, and even 2010. So the Perseverance had like a long like lead ahead of the helicopter team in terms of development. But I don't, a lot of that information is like public. You can look up even like the timeline when like even NASA even approved the helicopter to be on board of the Perseverance, which was basically like after we practically, develop it. That's also like, a lot of it is public information.
So I will get to the technicalities of the helicopter and Mars and its weight and how far it is and your role in it. But I want to ask you this: how did the world find out about Luay El-Bassiouni, a man from Gaza who has worked on the Mars team? What is the story there, and how was it received by your family and your friends in Gaza?
Yeah, it was really interesting because in the beginning, people were like always wondering why I keep posting, especially in LinkedIn. I was always posting articles about the helicopter, about the NASA mission, and people just thought I was a fan. And maybe I think one time I said I was part of the helicopter team. So a lot of time people didn't put things together. My resume said like I worked on the Leonardo project because that was the name of the project at the time. So it was like people did not connect the dots. So then I think somebody on Facebook, so I was actually talking as a technical expert on TRT about the mission when they've landed. And then the same time, it's like somebody from my last job, they actually posted a picture. They tagged me in a picture with the whole team. I was like, hey, Luay, you need to be proud of what you have done. So, and I think a lot of my cousins saw that. And then there's like, I think they started like copied the pictures. I mean, you might see these like low quality pictures going there, and some of them got published, you know. I mean, that's the reason that they are like that. Because I like, you know, they just basically like somehow like, you know, people just like copied them and posted them. And then was like, I mean, it got welcomed like it's crazy. I think, you know, the first people tweeted about it, and then it's got really big. And then my uncle, like people like coming congratulating him. And then he he basically threw up a party, a celebration party. And, you know, and then like, you know, they made banners, you know, they posted them in Beit Hanun. I think that there's the soccer club, like one of the soccer club in Beit Hanun, they basically made a banner and they honored me before the game. So I was like, I just keep getting these pictures. I'm like, you know, I'm busy working. I'm trying to follow up on things. And then it's like, everybody just wanted to talk to me. So like it all came by a surprise to me, because honestly, I didn't think I was gonna be like this. But, you know, I mean, I work a lot of cool things. So me as an engineer, I mean, working on the Mars helicopter is cool. I mean, yes, I'm proud to have something on Mars. And then, I mean, and honestly, until like it flew the first time, I mean, that's like when we really made history. I mean, there's a lot of other people. Like, I mean, I think that was a historical moment. It's like, you know, the flight. I mean, you know, working on something in Mars is pretty cool. But I mean, I work on a lot of things that actually, even a little bit more complex, that actually, you know, fly on Earth. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things like, you know, like from engineering perspective to me, it's like, you know, that I have other accomplishment I have done. But I think, you know, everybody like NASA. So it's like.
We like Mars. And just one last thing before we jump into the technicalities. I'm curious, because you and I previously chatted, and you mentioned that there are a lot of brilliant young minds and that has been reaching out to you especially from Palestine, from around the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what are you finding in terms of young people with, you know, who are very smart and driven?
Yeah, so I mean, it's I mean, I don't even know a lot of time how to handle it, because I mean, I get a lot of requests. Sometimes like you cannot distinguish what's, you know, who's who, because like, you know, I cannot really answer everybody. I get a lot of messages. But I mean, there's a lot of young people like asking for opinion. They're looking for mentors, what they should study, what should they do. I mean, I get a notion, a lot of people think like, you know, to be in NASA or to work in space, you have to be studying aeronautics or you have to study space, you know, I mean, so I mean, so like usually my feedback is like, study what you have the passion for. I mean, I got some people like sending me like basically technical question. I got one of these weirdest question ever. Somebody asked me about the particle collider, you know, and I was like, wow, you know, I mean, that's kind of like a big question. I had to do my own research to answer that question. But it's like, you know, yeah, I mean, it's really incredible to see. I mean, like, and we had a talk with the Minister of Education of Palestine, and, you know, there were a lot of like surprisingly young, like female students, like, you know, like in high school, they were asking very intelligent question. I mean, some of them even asking the question in English, you know, so I mean, there's a lot of incredible minds I see, like, you know, in the young generation. And, you know, I think we have to keep motivating them to do whatever they really have the passion for, you know, hoping with no limitation, with no discrimination, you know, or like, I mean, you know, I don't know the word discrimination between like male and female. And I think everybody should have the right to pursue their passion.
Great. Well, I mean, stories like yours are definitely an inspiration for these young people. And this is why we're so happy to have you here. I want to move a little bit to the technical aspects of it. And I want to clarify that a lot of our audience today, myself included, come from various fields that are not so technical, so you have to bear with us. But we do know that, or at least I looked it up, Mars today is around 310 million kilometers away from where we're at. And the closest it can ever get is 54.6 million kilometers. I mean, you can't even, like, to just think about that, you know, to try to envision it. And that's because of the orbiting and the rotation. Please visualize for us this helicopter. First of all, how do you design something to operate in such a foreign and removed and faraway space? What is the size of it? What is the weight of it? How did you account for the atmosphere on Mars? The testing process, whatever you can delve in terms of information. I know some of it is probably sensitive information. And what was the testing process for it? And how is it controlled from such a distance? Who controls it? So
Yeah, so design thing, whether it is for Mars or any environment, even in Earth, any engineering process, we start usually by understanding the requirement of the system. So basically, we like study with the number one thing is like, for anything, doesn't even have to be an aircraft. You study like what's the environment, like basically that's like the temperature, anything like temperature related, like humidity, because all these things affect your design. So you have to really understand all these parameters. And these parameters could be even different and more very challenging. I mean, if you want to design something to work on Antarctica, it could be very challenging because the weather conditions, like big major factor. Driving an electric car, like at the North Pole, that's going to be challenging. You have that's why car batteries, a lot of the EV car batteries, they have actually heaters in them. So without really and that apply the same to Mars. So from term of like the flight theory, the flight theory, there is a lot of like theoretical physics and about like how you can generate lift. So you take into account like what's the impact, what is that, so if we compare it to Earth, there's like different atmospheric pressure, like at sea levels all the way to the height of the mountain. So a plane you design at sea level is different than a plane you design on top of the mountain. So you take the same exact theory now. We compare it to Mars. So Mars is about 1% of the air density. That's equivalent to like flying at, over 100,000 feet on Earth, which is basically there's no aircraft fly in that kind of high altitude. Helicopter, for that matter, like the highest helicopter probably about 35,000, maybe experimental one maybe hit 40,000. There's like one or two of them. Like you don't see helicopter in a rescue mission on top of the Himalayas because they really cannot fly there. So, most of them cannot fly there. So we take these things and they apply and basically it's the same thing. So now we studied Mars and we discovered we based on the data that's been provided in the past and a lot of the physics and from the previous mission that we have certain measurements about 1% of Earth. The majority of the air comprised from carbon dioxide. So so basically they take these things based on that, and then everything based on mathematical calculation because you really cannot test everything in a day in a Mars atmosphere chamber. So JPL does have a Mars atmosphere chamber. I think it's been built in 1969, so it's not even something new, which is basically a big tank They basically they can create any pressure they want in it, and they basically suck the air out of it, and then they replace the air with CO2, carbon dioxide, which is similar to Mars, and they fly into it. So now you have another problem, like how you counter the Earth gravity, because the gravity on Mars is 1/3 of Earth. So this is kind of simple. Actually you just kind of hang a weight on it, you tie it with a string or something like that. So that's kind of and then you have to really design for a lot of these things. So the thing is running a functional, to run a simulating chamber, that costs a lot of money. So a lot of time you have to do everything based on theory and calculation. So everything you have done is basically we calculate everything. We have to review every single thing to make sure that the first time we go you request, because the to choose the chamber, you're actually going to be able to do it. And that applied basically to anything that can fly, even in Earth, So a lot of time is based on, you start with the theory. So, but now with that said, we've taken all these assumptions that really Mars is 1%, because, it's what if it is 2%? Whatever it is not even 1%, And so what if the number been, because we don't really have a lot of real data. There's only been 4 missions on Mars. I think they probably, maybe through different methods of imaginary, they figured out what is the atmosphere in Mars. There's there's this signature of different material. That's how they can guess what's in space. So a lot of this is based on things never been validated, So, so that's why it's flying it. It's to us, it's everybody's oh, great, we fly planes all the time. It's not a big deal. Yeah, maybe it's going to Mars is the big deal. It's no, this is huge because it's we made so many assumptions and being able to fly and actually exceed the expectation. It's incredible, So
how is it controls itself, or how does it control?
Oh, so on the control standpoint, so because of the distance you mentioned, the distance changed based on the location of Mars. So so there is a system they call Deep Space Network, DSN, which is basically it's a system they developed for the Curiosity, and they kind of improved on. It's basically have like it use like super small radio waves that transmit, and they have 2 satellites that rotate around Mars to be able to give you like literally 24-hour coverage, because you cannot have access straight to the Perseverance rover. So the helicopter does not really have a big antenna that can talk straight to Earth. So the helicopter talk to the rover. The rover have way that can talk directly to Earth, or it can talk to the 2 satellites around Earth, like if it is on the wrong side of Mars. And then these 2 satellites talk to like three satellites on Earth that collect the data, send them to JPL, or like, or whatever NASA facility, and then from there, they kind of like that take time, so because of that, everything had to be automated, because you cannot control it as like, hey, oh, I see some wind, I'm going to turn left. No, you can't do that. So basically you had to like study the area. That's why it took time, so like you have to study the area, you have to know where exactly it's going to land, and then it's like you have to program it to like fly and land, and like literally fly less than like few inches from like the location it's supposed to land. So I mean, a lot of that was like programmed. You load it 6 hours before, transfer it to the rover, like, even sometimes like it's 12 hours or 24 hours, make sure the rover got everything correctly. Then the rover transmitted to the helicopter, wait for a check signal, send back, and then you send back to Earth, and then like, yes. So now you fly, you send this thing and you're hoping the flight succeeded. I mean, it could have been failed already. So we were like, literally, we just like everybody else, we watching, it's like the flight could have crashed, by the because it could have crashed 4 hours ago, and now we're waiting for this data to come in, and then this data come in like in this like binary format, which is like zeros and ones, and then you have to like decode it, into like, the imagery into like the flight data. And then from that, we look as like, oh yeah, it took off, it flew like 15 feet, it went right, 30 meters, like, and, based on that, we know what it have done. And then, later on, like that's why the imagery sometimes take longer time, because they have bigger resolution, they have bigger data, so they take longer time to transmit. So, we get all the zeros and one first, and then you get all the imagery. And then usually a lot of time, like they're like, basically you can follow up on the NASA TV or the YouTube channel. A lot of time they broadcast that live.
Amazing. That's incredible. I'm baffled. We have so many questions coming in, but you mentioned that you were not even like, in this mission, not even sure if it would succeed. Not only succeeded, it actually exceeded expectations according to NASA. So for those of us with us today, if you don't know, this helicopter actually already made 4 flights on Mars, not just 1. There was the first one, it made 3 more, and there's supposed to be 2 more. Right, Luay, correct me if I'm wrong, but
there is one happening, right? There's one that has already happened, or it didn't happen. I don't know, because we
don't know yet.
Happen, and the data should come for the 5th flight right now.
So 4 have happened so far, and according to NASA, that the technology is actually met and surpassed the technical objectives, and has actually improved from flight to flight. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about those flights, what are we talking about in terms of number of seconds or amount of time, and how was this improvement?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, the first goal was to validate all the assumptions, all the calculation, all like everything we have been like done on Earth, right? So that's what number 1 is. Like, yes, we flew and we never even like, inside the Mars atmosphere chamber. I mean, it's basically like a few meter wide, so you cannot really travel 100 meters. So that's the first time ever happened. So I mean, like that was the first goal. It's like to actually fly. That will determine you can create lift. You can actually lift off the ground. Then it's like, the other goals, like actually you need to be able to collect the data, send it to Earth, to be able to optimize flight profile and use that data to understand really how is the control. Can you fly something bigger, things like that. That's all going to help things in the future. That's already accomplished. Reaching goals of like doing maneuvering and things like that, that's already accomplished. So like after all of that have been done, it's like, on the 4th mission, actually was able to do what they're calling almost like scouting. So I mean, which is basically is like, yes, in the beginning we're like, okay, if we got 1-2 pictures, the picture were not the priority, okay, because the cameras on the helicopter, one is used, the black and white one is used for navigation. That's how it see underneath it and actually navigate to see the surface. And then like there's a color camera, but it's just like it's a bonus, so So in the fourth mission, actually, I was able to take a lot of pictures. So basically, like, you know, like the whole area where the Perseverance rover is. So that could help in the Perseverance in navigating. So, I mean, this is things that could actually be utilized in the future. So originally we like, you know, made the assumption in the design that it actually operate to 92nd. So, you know, everything, you know, that actually was part of like meeting the weight requirement is like, hey, you know, we can only fly for 90 seconds. So let's design it only for, but, you know, so, I mean, that's like was a big part of it. I mean, the flight actually in the fourth flight, it reached 117 seconds. It traveled 266 meters, which is, it's a really huge area. And it actually was able to cover a lot of photos of that area. So,
and then finally, I want to, before I start taking the questions, is why? I mean, what would humans on Earth benefit from flying on Mars? We chatted, you and I chatted briefly before about the relationship to renewable energy and sustainability and how this could actually benefit. So it's not just that we're creating, I mean, we're going for Mission Impossible just to say, oh, we landed on Mars. But what benefits actually do these investments have for our future?
I mean, it's the same thing with the rover. I mean, you could ask the same question. Why are we even on Mars? I mean, a lot of it is to advancement of science and knowledge. So, I mean, that's like step one. So a helicopter will actually give us a lot more abilities for like, you know, like navigating bigger areas, seeing more areas. I mean, it's not about just flying. So like, let's say if you want to replace the rover with a helicopter or something flying, you could access like, you know, more like valleys. You can go to the top of mountains. Why are we on Mars? I mean, that doesn't only apply to the helicopter. I mean, that's, you know, that apply to any mission on Mars. I mean, studying Mars, I mean, help us to understand like the past of Mars, you know, help us understand the future of Earth. I mean, studying space in general and science that help us in many ways, like help us in many ways understanding, like helping us actually even understanding every single science we know, like from like you know, from astronomy to you know, to like physics. There's a lot of things like we understand about the universe, even understanding about matters on Earth, is actually go back to, you know, like understanding the universe. So like, yes, we cannot reach pretty far places in the universe, but, you know, like now we have like 2 points in the system. We have Earth, we have Mars. So we can actually understand more into the system. So in terms of like developing an advancement of technology, that's like, I think of it like, you know, it's like, think about it as like, I mean, since the time of like the Cold War between Kennedy and Korshunov, I think, if I remember his name correctly. I mean, you know, like, you know, instead of we having like this, like, you know, like race into like who have the best weapons and spending things like that. I mean, we could use this advancement of goals into space. I mean, a lot of these things come back to Earth and advancement of technology. Like most people are not aware that most technology we have, like, you know, from your cell phones to your solar panels to like, a lot of them were developed for space, you know? So, I mean, you know, it's basically like your R&D, like your research. I mean, why do university have research, you know? Because like sometimes they have research money, but for no goal, right? So I think having a directed goal with like measurable things actually can help us advance further. I mean, reaching Mars is like help us advancing, like, you know, traveling through space, help us advancing a lot of technologies, including like solar panel batteries, like, you know, how to even develop alternative energy, like I mean, the way the whole rover operates, I mean, it's completely like, I mean, a lot of times it's super expensive, but at the same time, like a lot of this like research come back to Earth. I mean, most people who start companies, a lot of them actually come out of like people work on these at super advanced projects. So a lot of time it actually create ideas, you know, helping at like, you know, because, you know, you're pushing the limit. So when you're pushing the limit, I mean, and this thing allow you to push the limit, because if we're going to do everything for like basically for the sake of for profit, you know, a lot of time, like we're not going to push the science to its limit, you know? So absolutely. From that perspective, that's another way there's advantages come back to Earth.
Thank you. I have so many questions I'd like to ask you, but I think, I mean, we have so many questions coming in from the audience, so I will take it to the Q&A with the audience. And this relates directly to what we're talking about is, how does the helicopter fly? Is it charged with the battery or is it through solar powers?
Yeah, so it is a solar powered aircraft. So basically there is the solar panel that charged battery. There's a battery inside of it. And, you know, to operate in the battery. So to use the battery heated during the night to stay warm. So like, you know, part of the energy go to the heater, and then the next day will get to fly. So I mean, that's another reason you cannot fly every day, because you have to like preserve energy to stay heated and then go back for a second day to fully charge. And then whenever it gets back to fully charged based on the solar panel, then it can do another flight.
Okay. And the second question I have, are the motors custom or off the shelf? And if custom, can you discuss the process of motor design with the HP, KW of each of the rotor motors? This is a very technical question.
Yeah, this is like, crossing a lot of lines. So as they mentioned, actually, it seemed like this guy actually was listening to the NASA feed, and yeah. So I mean, as they mentioned, I mean, they're like semi-custom, like so the servo motors basically kind of off the shelf, semi-custom. The propulsion motor, they're actually fully custom. I mean, I cannot really describe anything about them. I mean, but there's nothing have been released to the public. But yeah, I mean, they are fully custom. And the motor controller is fully custom. I mean, that's actually one of the few things that are actually fully custom in the helicopter.
And another technical question, due to the weight and constraints of the battery flight time, does the current helicopter have the ability to be tethered, just like you did in the initial testing phase?
Tethered from what? So,
I lost connection. I'm sorry. أنا آسفة.
So, due to the weight constraints, does the current helicopter have the ability to be tethered? If the question is not clear, maybe the person.
No, I mean, the question is clear. I mean, there is no source of energy to tether it to something. I mean, that's a really cool idea. Maybe we can create a tether helicopter in the future that actually tethered to the Perseverance rover.
You wrote, yeah, tethered from the rover.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, why not? I mean, I think this is a really cool idea. I mean, I mean, I worked on tethered helicopters before. So. But yeah, I mean, I worked on tethered aircraft. I mean, it is very possible. But the thing is, the most important thing people have to keep in mind that the helicopter is an experimental mission, while the Perseverance actually is a real mission. So the Perseverance rover does have a mission and goals, that extend behind just like driving on the surface of Mars for scientific purposes. So that's the reason the helicopter mission is like, even though it's gonna work great, NASA gives it an extra 30 days that then the rover have to go. I mean, if the helicopter was not able to like work in further range than originally planned, like was known, they might have left it behind because it's already met its goal. And, I mean, the budget of the Perseverance rover is like, it's like over $1 billion. So, you're not gonna keep it around for the sake of the helicopter.
Yeah, I read recently in the NASA announcement is that the Red Planet rotorcraft will shift focus from proving flight is possible on Mars to demonstrating flight operations that future aerial craft could utilize. Mm-hmm. What does this mean?
So, because like it's basically getting into the behavior functionality of a rotorcraft. So in the beginning, it was like flight demonstration or flight data collection, right? So like that's basically to prove that we can fly. So now it's actually it's like trying to prove that, hey, can I be like, I'm basically gonna be like the girlfriend of the Perseverance rover. I'm gonna be this companion. I'm gonna be the scout. I'm gonna help him like navigate. Is that really a possible thing? What is the advantages? So, and that's why it's like now is more like taking a lot of images. And these images probably would be fed to the Perseverance rover. I'm not really aware what they would use it for, but that's really what that means. It's like basically, like being a companion. Like, so in the future, you will see a rover with a future helicopter. I mean,
it's like cartoons walking next to you.
Yeah. It's like, hey,
Amazing. Another question is there a remote problem solving system on the helicopter?
A remote problem?
Remote problem solving. So if remotely, so can you solve is there a remote problem solving system on the helicopter? Can you solve challenges?
I mean, you can talk to anything. You can load software over the air. So I mean, that's what happened. Like when they had a problem with the computer. So with the watchdog timer, when they were switching between one mode to another. So to overcome that problem, they actually load sequence of commands, like in certain order, to be able to overcome the problem, so it does not, you know, so the watchdog timer doesn't time out. I mean, there's other ways they can actually load software. I think it is risky. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but I mean, it is possible if they have to, you know, I mean, and they do update like flight software based on the data. So, I mean, there's always like possibility that they could do that.
And what atomic energy used to fuel the helicopter and energy? The percentage of solar, atomic, other sources used?
It's only solar.
Only solar.
I mean, when it wasn't the Perseverance, you know, like, you know, there is some type similar. That's how the Perseverance rover run, some type of like atomic energy or nuclear energy.
Great. And now we're moving to more of the challenges, questions, not so technical, but what are the biggest difficulties you encountered in making the Mars helicopter?
Wait.
Tell us more. Wait a second, like wait.
I mean, timeline, wait. I mean, you know, I mean, flying in general is very difficult in terms of weight. That's your number one thing. I mean, there is other problem. I mean, I really cannot disclose, you know, like, you know, technical design problems. But I mean, from like scientific problem, like, you know, like, it's basically like, it was really challenging to meet the weight requirement. I'll design something from weight, also like the things like to operate at these temperatures, you know, also operating with the radiation that works on Mars. Because I mean, Mars does not have an atmosphere, so most electronics subjected to space radiation, and that actually could be like very damaging to electronics. So I mean, that's one of the biggest risks, and we have to really design for.
Great. And a few people actually asked, is that, have you faced any obstacles and challenges in your life and in working as a result of being Arab, as a result of your background and race?
You know, this is like a really tough question, but I mean, you know, I mean, United States, and like, for as companies and government, I mean, they have an institution, like a lot of policy against discrimination. So I mean, even sometimes I feel like they might be over too much, but so I mean, like that doesn't happen at that level. But I'm sure like people, you know, I mean, that happen anywhere. I mean, it happened, you know, even in the Arabic world. I mean, you know, if it like discrimination exists everywhere. So I'm sure like people have, you know, their own personal opinion and, you know, but their own personal reservations. I mean, I did run into problem in college. You know, I used to deliver pizza. I mean, I got attacked by kids who stole my pizza sign. So, I mean, and they cursed me, you know, told me, you know, but I mean, you know, that thing happened. I mean, I don't think it should bother you. I mean, you know, ignorant people are everywhere. So, you know, you just can't pay attention to it.
Somebody's asking, is it possible to fly the helicopter on the moon?
Oh, wow.
I like that question.
So actually, you know, flying, so that helicopter probably wouldn't fly anywhere other than Mars because it's designed for the Mars. You know, maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe it'll break itself if you fly it on Earth, just like, you know, but there's a lot less air than Earth, so than Mars even. I don't even think there is that much. The moon actually is like, it's a lot more challenging, believe it or not, than Mars, because the temperature difference is also like really different. So negative 175 degrees C all the way to 175 degrees C, like it gets super hot and super cold. So I don't know if you could fly on the moon. Maybe you can hop on the moon.
Well, if you have the magnets, otherwise you'll be flying off. So somebody's also asking, what is the difference in response time to commands between the aircraft on Mars and the control on Earth?
I mean, in theory, I think it's like the delay is about 39 seconds. I mean, it's been like the flight data to take about like roughly 3.5 to 4 hours to come back. So unusually they load the software before. There is faster method. There's a couple different ways they load things. Some of them faster than others. I don't know the exact number, but like, you know, you can get almost close to real time with like just like bits, ones and zero, just very, very slow. But then for like the bigger the data, take longer time.
Okay. And I have a question. I mean, how long is this planned to stay on Mars? The rover and the helicopter. For how long? Is there a timeline?
I mean, the rover. I mean, like just like rovers. I mean, usually they have like a 1 to 2 year time limit, but they'll operate them until they basically stop working. I mean, they still. I mean, I think that the Perseverance rover like it stayed like so operated like a lot longer than it was anticipated. The helicopter mission will probably end before the winter. Even like if they extend it again, I don't think it will survive the winter on Mars. It's gonna be really cold. It's not.
When is that? How long? I mean, when is winter on Mars?
It's probably in a couple months. So
okay.
So like, I mean, like few months, I think it'll be like the winter on Mars. The temperature will start changing, getting a lot colder, and then like I don't think it would probably be able to maintain itself.
So what happens to it then?
Assuming they didn't crash it before, So like, I think they might be a little, plan like in the last flight, it's going to be probably like a known flight. They probably like push it to its limit, and then maybe like it will crash. Because, you can get a lot of data. I mean, you get more data from failure than successes. So.
So you might crash it on purpose. We won't tell NASA.
I'm speculating here. So I would crash it if I'm like.
Did you have Palestinian scientists as heroes or mentors growing up? And if so, what are their names?
I mean, my dad is my hero. So, I mean, he's like my dad is a surgeon. I mean, he struggled a lot. So, I mean, all through his life. So, I mean, he's always been my hero and my guide, and I mean, I have a lot of other Palestinian. I mean, I like Mahmoud Darwish. I have a lot of other Palestinian I have huge respect for. I mean, like not only like Palestinian, even others. I mean, tend to find most of my people I follow like morally philosopher than scientist. But I just find out that actually one Palestinian guy, he actually worked on the Apollo mission. I think he passed away. His name is Issam Nimr. I just found out like some guy messaged me. It's like, oh, my dad worked on the Apollo mission. He would be so excited. Honestly, I don't know what he done. So I mean, there's a lot of successful Palestinian Arabs in all the different fields. So
okay. So there's a few questions. Will there be a modification to the current aviation systems after the success of the helicopter system will benefit from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, this is, always kind of the majority of like flight, out of flight pilots, like they usually like use a lot of like optimization and calibration during flight. So, I mean, basically, like it's almost like it kind of learned from the previous preparation and then like kind of update. They kind of update themselves, or like you use that data to update the software. I think there already have been some of that happening. But I mean, yeah, I mean that definitely all that data will be used in the future.
And can it survive a storm? In quotes, a sandstorm.
I mean, there is not that much air on Mars, so I mean, there is dust and there is dust storms and stuff like that. I mean, it's designed to a certain level of wind, but so I mean that so it could survive up to that level, which basically, based on prediction, is going to happen.
Okay, and here's a bit of a bigger question. I don't know if you can answer it, but why choose Mars? Why not another planet?
I mean, so far everything we have been doing is to Mars. There's what they call the Clipper program that actually go into the Titan, which is a moon. But so, I mean, there is other missions. I mean, there is like, Cassini that, like it's a probe that travels. So, I mean, there is a lot of other missions. Mars is not the only one, but it seems like Mars is it's the closest one. It's the closest one in terms of to Earth, and there's a lot of relationship in terms of the way it is to Earth. So I'm sure like there would be future mission to other places, but I think everything, it seemed like Mars is the one.
Great. And Mars, honestly, when you look at pictures from Mars and you look at pictures of some places on Earth, you think they're almost the same. You know, like the deserts and even here in Wadi Rum. And sometimes you try to imagine, you think you're on another planet on Mars. So another question I have is, what advice would you give to students who want to pursue a degree in engineering? And I'm assuming here it's the same engineering you studied. So it's not structural, like building engineering, it's electrical engineering.
I mean, focus, like, you know, really pay attention to the fundamental. Anybody studying engineering, I think the most important thing, and I see that a lot, you know, because I do recruiting and things like that. Like, you know, if you lack the fundamental, you like that, you're going to struggle if you want to get into design. So, I mean, because there's a lot of jobs in engineering. So you don't necessarily have to, like, you're going to be the designer who design and invent and innovate. I mean, 80% of engineers just basically like, I don't know, let's say paper pusher. I mean, they're like either writing specification or doing testing or doing validation. But I mean, like, you know, if you want to really like get into the design to actually, you know, do a lot of that, you really need to focus on the fundamental, which is like maybe the classes you think is boring and you wonder why you're studying. You know, like, you know, the calculus, the math, the physics, I think that's very important, because if you have strong fundamental, you basically can do anything. And then like just follow your passion. I mean, you know, if you don't, I don't think like a lot of people think about, if you go into higher education, like, you know, master or PhD, then yeah, you can follow, maybe like get more specialized. I don't think like specialization really, like specialization comes from experience. I mean, I studied, you know, hardware design in my undergrad. I studied communication and control theory and electromagnetism in my master. You know, I did some master program classes in computer science, and I'm an expert in power electronics. So I'm kind of like brought all these things together with my industry experience to create me today, you know. So like, you know, I think you have to keep that in mind. You know, it's like you really do not learn everything in the university. So that's why it's like the fundamental is important. A lot of things come, and I recommend everybody to go on internship work. You know, I mean, I love University of Louisville for the reason they have a co-op program, which basically everybody have to go 3 semesters to work. You know, like you study a class semester, then you go work for a semester. And, you know, that's actually, you know, I think that's very beneficial, because you actually help you before you graduate to know even what specialty you wanted to do, you know, you want to get in certain things. And that apply to all engineering, you know. So, you know, try to get internship, you know. I mean, that's the least, and a lot of the school do not offer co-op program. But, you know, it's like, even after the first year, you know, it's like, because it's going to give you that exposure, you know, it's going to make you like, oh, I'm really studying the wrong thing, you know.
Definitely gives you the hand-on experience. It makes you really understand whether or not this is something you actually want to pursue, other than the fanciness or the theory of it. So somebody is asking a really interesting question, if you can answer it, is if you were given, you as Lu'ay, if you were given the resources you need to do whatever project you want to develop, what would you do?
Whatever I want with all the resources I need?
Yes. We'll give you a winning lottery ticket for like 200 million, whatever.
I'd probably work on like electric airplanes. I mean, electric airplanes, I mean, if it's not really the purpose to make money, but, you know, I mean, I'll probably start, you know, combining to work on advanced electric airplanes.
Is that the future? Do you see that happening?
I think in the long-term future. I mean, I think that the future might have like, it's a hybrid system, so it will not be, until if we cannot figure a way to do different way of doing energy storage in terms of electricity, I think electric propulsion is a lot more efficient. So, you know, I mean, that's really, you know, it's like, you know, you're talking about 95% versus combustion engine is like about, you know, gas engine is like, you know, usually less than 50%. I mean, jet engine is a little bit more efficient. They're like, you know, maybe like 60, 70%. So like, you know, you could save a lot more energy doing that. I mean, I think this is like the thing most people miss. That's why electric cars actually, they're more efficient, even though if you use a gas generator to charge it.
So we're almost at the hour, but there's one final question, which actually relates to a question I have for you as a final question, which says, great talk. So will Lu'ay be the first Palestinian on Mars?
I don't know. I don't know if I'll qualify, but I mean, for what program I'm going to be if like they happen, you know. So, you know, I mean,
So what is next for you? Have you reached your goal? Would you say you reached your goal, or?
I didn't even start yet. I mean, what?
Oh, wow.
No, I always, since I was a kid, I always wanted to start my own company. So I mean, I have this entrepreneurial spirit in me since I was a kid. I mean, I started many small companies. I mean, from like, I don't even remember the age. I always used to like buy and sell things. I mean, I had my photography business. I used to trade in fruits. I used to do like, you sell candy to kids, sell toys. I mean, I don't know. And then I was like, I just wanted to do something different. I didn't want it to be just a traditional businessman. I wanted to actually make something innovative. So, I mean, when you start hearing like me and Elon Musk, like have fight tweeting paddle battles, maybe I'll be close to my goal. I'll be like, about to like able to get him out of business, but.
I look forward to seeing that. And finally, it's actually a question I missed, but it's also part of the closing, is have you had a chance to connect with Palestinians from Gaza and share your experience to give them inspiration? And related to that, if you have any final words to young people, especially young people who come from conflict-ridden countries, from occupation, who are refugees, not just in Palestine, but around the world, what would you say, and how are you inspiring them in your own capacity?
Everybody have the right to dream. I mean, I encourage everybody to dream and like not to be limited by everything around them and everybody around them. Try to like, seek ways to find, to be able to get out of what they're in, like to achieve their dreams and their goals. I mean, I think you can do anything you really want. I don't think there's a limitation of what situation you're in. I think you should use it to encourage you to actually do better. I mean, there's always like, advantages. I mean, you can have to just find and focus on the positive things to succeed. I mean, and it's difficult, I mean, I know it could be really difficult, but if you like get really stuck in the negative thinking, you're not really like gonna be able to do anything. So I mean, like you really have to like try really hard and fight to do whatever you can to succeed.
Well, thank you so much, Luay. I mean, I think this webinar could have gone for probably another half an hour or even longer, but I learned so much from you today, and I hope everybody who had joined us had learned so much today. And really, thank you. It was a pleasure, and thank you for your time.
Yeah. If anybody have a question, I mean, feel free to message me on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I mean, I probably wouldn't be like responding right away, but I'll be happy to respond to everybody. I try to respond to everyone.
I can attest to that. That's how we got Luay to come onto this webinar, through a Facebook message. So he is very accessible. Thank you so much, Luay. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us from Gaza to Mars in the 2021 webinar series. Keep an eye out on our social media for an announcement soon for the next session in the series, which will take place on May 20th, 2021. From all of us at MIT Arab Alumni Association, stay safe and goodbye.